Welcome to the lecture on water use. We're going to discuss today how we can start using water more sustainably, some solutions. First question I want to ask you is, who do you think uses the most water? Do you think it is your household or a municipality? Do you think it is industry, or do you think it's agriculture? In order they are, what do you think? Which is going to be? Which is number one? Who uses the most? Yep, you were right if you said agriculture. They use the most. If that's the case, then if we're talking about resource and saving resources on water, where do you think we should focus some of our efforts and our energy? Yep, you're right. We should focus on agriculture. 70% agriculture, 20% industry, and only 10% is household. So at least we're doing a good job individually. Okay, so water waste. Worldwide, 65 to 70% of water used is actually wasted. And what's really important to know is that 60% of the irrigation water that is applied to the crops doesn't actually reach the crops themselves. So if we could use different irrigation methods, then perhaps we can also save this water waste. But the evaporation, leaks, and misuse of water is another big problem. So you want to create pipes that do not have access to sun, so that if you have a closed pipe system, then at least you will prevent evaporation. Okay, so the first type of irrigation that we use, or I want to talk about, so the way flood irrigation works is that actually basically you use gravity, and you basically just dump a bunch of water down a tunnel, and basically 40% of that is actually lost to evaporation. And that kind of wasteful method is actually used on 97% of China's irrigated land. So we're trying to move away from just simply using a gully and gravity flow, where basically you just allow the water to go down a slope and hopefully hit something useful. But we're moving away from that, hoping to go toward more of a center pivot. It's kind of like a low pressure sprinkler system, and that one has pumps that spray water on the crop, and at least there you'll have about 80% of the water actually will reach the crop in that situation. And if you use a low energy but a precision application sprinkler, you'll get 90 to 95%. But the actual most efficient and the best way to go would be a drip or trickle irrigation, micro irrigation system. That one will deliver the small amounts of water precisely to the crops, because you're basically going to have like plastic tubes with a bunch of holes in it, and those pinholes will let the droplets of water hit the roots of the plant really close to the roots. That way it's going exactly where it needs to go. Problem with that one, though, unfortunately, is that it's actually expensive, but it does reduce water waste by 90 to 95%, which, I mean, that's how much of the water will actually hit the crop. So that's pretty impressive right there. Unfortunately, drip irrigation is used on just over 1% of the world's irrigated crop, and for those percentages are in the United States. Good news, the capital cost of the new type of drip irrigation system, it was developed by a nonprofit organization, and it is actually a lot cheaper per hectare, as much as about 1/10 as much less per hectare as the conventional drip system. So that's really good for poor farmers, and that can help them raise their crop yields in water short areas, because if we increase the cost of water, like we've been talking about, if we increase the cost to help with conservation, well, that the fear is that it's going to impact farmers, the poor farmers, and so they're not going to be able to afford irrigating their land. So there's some other things that they've talked about to do for that. And basically, if you have kind of a user pay approach, I know we talked about that a little bit, where you have a certain amount perhaps for free. If you're using your own pump, you have a certain amount for free or for a cheaper rate, and then once you exceed that amount, that you meet your basic needs, then you'll pay a higher price. And so we've talked a lot about increasing the price or decreasing the subsidies that farmers get for, like, they get a lot of subsidies for making corn, and or growing corn, I should say, for our ethanol and for our meat production for our cows, et cetera, et cetera. So we took off that price break that they're getting for that. Then perhaps maybe we'd conserve a little bit more. Okay, so here is the example of the gravity flow. Gravity flow, also called flood. Basically see how it's like a gully, and they're just letting water go down, and hopefully you'll hit it. Drip irrigation, you have the circles that are at least getting closer to the roots, whereas at center pivot, you are right on the money there. Solutions: reducing irrigation water waste. Okay, so line the canals, bringing water to irrigation ditches so that the water doesn't go down and infiltrate and percolate down to the groundwater. Irrigate at night to reduce evaporation. Monitor soil and add water only when necessary. Grow several crops on each plot. Encourage organic farming. Avoid growing water-thirsty crops in dry areas. Remember, that's the rice and alfalfa. Shouldn't be. You might need to import that. Irrigate with treated urban wastewater, and usually you do that. They talk about with treated right there, but they also talk about using wastewater from plants, sewage plants, for areas that you know are not going to be for food. So if it's just going to be like someone's yard, and there you can see the import water intensive crops and meat. So instead of using your own water to grow those crops, why don't you go ahead and just bring it in? And there's a case study in your book actually where they talk about Israel, how they did a great job with doing all of these things and how it really impacted their local economy. Another solution is hydroponic agriculture, and it says here the cultivation of crops in greenhouse conditions with roots fed a nutrient-rich solution but no soil. So basically you have your plants and your roots in a trough, and the water is pumped from the troughs and it's sprayed on the plants, kind of like an artificial rain. So the water that's not taken up is actually reused. It takes 95% less water, and you can get higher yields per hectare, vertically growing capacity, and have year-round conditions. And actually in waterpart parts of Africa, farmers have been growing tomatoes and other veggies hydroponically in small greenhouses. They use inexpensive materials to do that. So it's actually been helping our developing countries in some places be able to actually have some good crops. We can cut water waste in industry and homes. Oops, there. Recycle water in industry, especially in energy generation and steam. So why not use, anytime you're going to develop when you're using, I'm trying to think what's the word, electromagnetic induction. There you go. The whole purpose is that we are trying to move that turbine so you can get electrons moving, so you can get electricity. And basically what you do is you have to heat the coal, and that coal is what heats the water, and then that water steam is what turns the turbine. Same thing with nuclear energy, nuclear reactors, same thing's happening. They use the radioactive decay, heats up the water, gets the steam, turns the turbine. Anyway, what are you going to do with all that thermal pollution and all that steam? Well, why not use that water, because it condenses back down again, and you can use that for something else. And I already talked about how you use a lot of the sewage treatment plants. You can use their treated water to go back and irrigate golf courses and land, etc. Fix leaks in the plumbing systems. That's an easy solution. Use water thrifty landscaping. Xeriscaping. Xeriscaping is basically where you use the native plants of an area to landscape. So like if you're in the desert, why would you bring in all these water thirsty plants when you know you live in a desert? So your yard should pretty much be like cacti and sand. And for here in Georgia, it'd actually be kind of pretty because we have a lot of really pretty native plants, hence the beautiful garden around the corner. Or use gray water. Gray water is wastewater from baths, showers, bathroom sinks, and washing machines. Basically, it's so everything but your toilets. So you don't want to. Some people, you don't want to use that. But if you can redo your pipes so that this gray water can go outside, you can use it. You can create a rain barrel for it, or you can just have straight up piping for it, and it will just immediately dump onto a particular bed that you need watered. A lot of people are doing that. It's a little up front. It's a little bit work because you got to rearrange your pipes a little bit, but it's very, very useful, and it's actually well worth it. And back to the topic of rain barrels, there's actually a technical name for that. They call it rainwater harvesting. Basically, you just provide drinking water and for growing crops. They've been doing this all around the world, but you basically are running pipes from rooftops and digging channels to catch rainwater. Usually that runs off and runs into the land, but you can store it in shallow aquifers, ponds, and water tanks and use those during dry spells. And it's actually used when getting this information from your book now. They're saying it's used in developing countries like India, where much of the rain comes in short monsoon season. So why not tap into that and harness that so that you can then use it later on? But you got to be careful because if you don't do it the right way, you know that water is going to evaporate. And of course, you can use water-saving fixtures such as the low-flow showers, heads, low-flow toilets, low-fill toilets, etc. We already talked about that. So. Outside the home, there's an awesome example of the xeriscaping, low water landscaping. It uses native vegetation that can survive local climate without additional water. So this is an example of where they're using their local flora, like your cacti. And over here, how beautiful is our native habitat? What can you do? Water use and waste. Use water-saving toilets, shower heads, faucet aerators. Shower instead of taking baths. Take short showers. Repair water leaks. Turn off sink faucets while brushing your teeth, shaving, or washing. Wash only full loads of clothes or use the lowest possible level water setting. A lot of the new HE washers and dryers, they're nice because they do like a sense load and they can feel how heavy your load is, and then they'll give the correct amount of water for it. Use recycled or gray water for watering lawns and houseplants and for washing cars. Wash a car from a bucket of soapy water and only use the hose for rinsing. If you use commercial, try to find the one that recycles its water. Replace your lawn with native plants. Water lawns in the morning or evening. The gardener in me wants to point out, though, that you need to do it in the morning because if you water in the afternoon, it'll evaporate. But if you water in the evening, like it says right here, that can promote mold growth on your roots. So don't listen to that part right there. Ignore where it said bad. Don't say or evening. Don't do that. Use drip irrigation and mulch for gardens and flower beds so you can maintain the moisture so it won't evaporate away. Okay, how do you use your water? 41% in toilet flushing, 32% in bathing, 21% in laundry, and 5% in cooking and drinking. So, tells you right here that those double flush toilets, the one where you can choose if it's number 1 or number 2, might come in handy. Is your toilet water too clean? Oh, goodness. Okay, well, for here, using gray water, see, basically you can use this water, this leftover water over here to fill your toilet tank. So we're not saying use your toilet tank for your toilet waste water for irrigating. We're just saying use your sink waste. But the reason it asks if, sometimes if your water is too clean, if you have blue, like the cleaner in your toilets, in the tank in the back. Sometimes the concern is that you are breaking down, like the chlorine inside of those cleaning tablets might break down some helpful bacteria. So anyway, and then the other thing you can do to help with water waste is use a composting toilet. Now, I used one of these at the hike-in last spring, and I tell you what, it does not smell at all. There's always a fan going in there, though, and if you leave this shut, it won't aerate out. But it's a constant, like you can feel the air moving when you're in there, like the circulation of the air. It did not stink at all, and I even went down and looked at the residual into the access door, and the compost really, by the time it's completely been broken down, it ends up being like kind of like you can put it back into the dirt. It has a dirt-like consistency to it. The end.